Hello everyone, my name is Doug Marks and my topic for the rapid fire video is procurement. Not only is procurement a topic in our program, but a subject which is frequently spoken about in my workplace. I work in the oil and gas industry, and since the oil price crash of 2014, much of the talk in the industry is about how to save money. As the development of oil and gas fields is largely project oriented, oil companies are refining the project process, and one aspect they're looking into is procurement. Given this, I will research and discuss procurement and procurement trends in industry in general. From there, I will narrow down the range of research to procurement topics pertaining to the oil and gas industry, focusing on environmental aspects and procurement improvement research. The overall goal is to understand trends in procurement and how and if the procurement process is actually being improved. So to start with, I'll give a basic definition of procurement. Procurement is the act of obtaining or buying a good or service. It is often part of a company's strategy, as a company's ability to purchase services and materials affects its ability to operate. As procurement has been part of businesses for some time, in most cases, companies already have a procurement plan in place to buy a good or service. To understand current trends in the procurement industry, several articles on the procurement subject were reviewed, and the one I've chosen to focus on evaluated 119 papers written on the subject from 1973 to 2015. The title of the article is Summary of Project Procurement Management, a Structured Literature Review. The data for the study involved conceptual and theoretical publications, case studies, literature reviews, and surveys. Early in the research process, the paper uncovered an interesting fact about the increase in interest in procurement itself. The study found there were only 39 articles written on the subject from 1973 to 2007, but from 2007 to the end of 2015 there was 80. This shows the increasing importance and interest in procurement. The industry which was found to contribute most actively to the research was the construction industry. So now that we've seen that there is an increase in interest in procurement, the article also described the most important aspects of the procurement process and provided a description of categories most cited for supplier selections. So basically, according to the studies, companies are looking for the following when they go for quote or proposals. They're looking for quality, was rated number 1, and that's about the ability of a company to provide products and services according to the specifications and ensure quality systems are being followed. Number 2 was cost price, very important as well. It's self-explanatory, and obviously companies don't want to pay more than they have to for a good or service. Staff features was number 3, and it was about the quality of a staff a company has working for them, their qualifications, experience, etc. So I guess the adage is true that employees are a very valuable asset for companies. Financial was also mentioned. It was important as companies want to deal with financially stable companies. They don't want a company to endure financial hardship during the project, because that will affect their product and how they deliver a project. So financial stability of a company is important. Company management was highly rated as well. And it's basically from how a company deals with clients to how they run a company. So basically, if you're the customer, you want to be treated well, and obviously if they run a company well, often the product they produce, in theory, will be a good product. Expertise was another factor. Companies want to see that the companies they contract are familiar with the local environment and the product they want made. They want to see experience in that field, and they want to be able to see, for example, the company can work in the geographical conditions and keep in mind weather, remote locations, etc. Time was a final consideration, and basically the ability for a project to be completed on time. So that was important as well, because once your vendor is delayed, it delays your project as well. So that's an important factor. So basically that summarizes what companies are looking for in suppliers. So now that general trends in the industry have been examined, I'm going to focus on the oil and gas industry. The topics I will explore in procurement relating to the oil and gas industry are the environmental aspect and new procurement initiatives. So environmentally, the importance of environmental issues pertaining to project procurement management for the oil and gas industry were examined. According to a paper written in 2010, oil and gas project managers have a good perception of sustainable practice, but showed basically greening the procurement practices or processes are not high on their priority list. So the study did not find any major findings, and no new practices were found. So based on that, I'm assuming the green initiatives weren't high on the company's priority list. The next subject looked at was improvements in the procurement process. For this, the most up-to-date information was found to be written in Korea. This was thought to be mostly due to the downturn in the oil and gas industry. Korean companies have experienced substantial cost overruns and prolonged schedule delays when providing things such as pipe work to large oil and gas projects valued at over $1 billion. With low profits, they identified it as more important than ever to do things correctly, and a critical element to their projects involved piping installation and the procurement of piping materials. To remedy this, a study was undertaken called Integrating a Procurement Management Process into Critical Chain Project Management, a case study on the oil and gas projects. In the study, it evaluated and reviewed the critical path method and program evaluation techniques for scheduling projects, and found them to be lacking. To action this, an improved critical chain project management process was proposed. The idea was to prevent construction delays due to material procurement processes in mega projects. The new process introduced 3 categories of buffers called project buffers, feeding buffers, and resource buffers, and integrates the material resource management process into the critical chain project management process. This basically enables project managers to check the availability of piping materials needed for installation in advance to avoid delays. Through this process, piping materials are seen as a resource, and any schedule impacts are managed through the resource buffer flexibility. The proposed process performance has been verified through the Monte Carlo simulation as part of the project case study. So in this particular project, they evaluate pipe work, but it certainly could be brought over to other aspects of material procurement to projects as well. So in conclusion, my research covered procurement trends, and how procurement in general could ultimately improve projects. A literature review was used to understand trends and issues in the procurement side of projects. The literature demonstrated procurement was becoming more visible in project management, and identified 7 main categories companies identified as important aspects in selecting vendors in the procurement process. By identifying these important aspects of procurement, they become more visible and hence can be focused on to achieve future improvements. It's also important for people to understand what companies want if they're to provide the service. So in the case studies in the oil and gas industry which were examined, which pertained to the environmental aspect of procurement and initiatives to improve procurement. For the environmental side, new initiatives were discovered, but new initiatives were discovered pertaining to large industrial projects in Korea. The Koreans are currently developing improved critical chain project management process, which incorporates a material procurement process in mega projects. Excuse me. The paper states the critical chain project management scheduling technique, when coupled with adequate use of resource buffers and procurement management processes, is more apt to effectively manage project risks and thus prevent project delays and extra costs. So, with this evidence, it can be said that the procurement is becoming more visible and important in project management, and there are improved methods being developed for improving material management. And that's it. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the speech.